Have you ever wondered about the bedrock beliefs of a major movement?
That fundamental starting point.
Exactly. Today, we're doing just that. We're not jumping straight into the details, the doctrines themselves yet, but instead we're looking at the guide, the key that unlocks a whole set of ideas.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? We're starting not with a specific teaching, but with the author's own introduction, his framing.
Right. This deep dive is all about the preface to a collection of sermons, specifically the one John Wesley wrote for his first series of 53 discourses.
And for you listening, understanding the context here is, well, it's crucial.
Yeah.
This preface, written around 1747,
Yeah, about then.
it basically pulls together the core ideas Wesley had been preaching for, the last 8 or 9 years before that?
Hmm.
Think of it like the source, the spring from which his later, more structured theology would flow.
Which makes it so incredibly valuable for us now. This preface, it's like a personal orientation to the beliefs he was championing right at that key time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Understanding it gives you this vital lens for looking at the sermons that come next sermons, which, like you said, are foundational for Methodist doctrine. It's really about getting the why behind the what, especially as we gear up to explore those sermons later on.
Precisely. It's not just a polite intro. This is a deliberate statement of intent. It's his roadmap for how he wants you to understand his whole framework.
Absolutely. And the source itself is just so revealing, isn't it? We get Wesley's own words about his aims, his approach to theology, what he thought was essential for true religion.
It's a direct line into his thinking as he's putting this core message out there.
So that brings up the big question. Why did he publish these sermons? What was his main purpose?
Well, he tells us pretty directly. He says these sermons have the substance of his preaching from those previous, say, 8 or 9 years.
So it's like a concentrated version of his main teachings up to that point.
Yeah, and what really jumps out at me is when he says every essential point of doctrine he teaches is in there, incidentally, if not professedly.
That signals a real commitment, doesn't it, to making his core beliefs totally accessible, totally transparent.
Right. He wanted any serious man, and I think we can broaden that today, anyone seriously wanting to understand,
Sure.
to clearly get his core ideas about true religion just from reading this collection. It's about being direct, being clear, laying that foundation before we get into the specifics later.
And that focus on clarity leads right into his style, his deliberately plain style.
Ah, yes, this is such an insightful bit. He's upfront about it.
Mm.
These sermons are not meant to be elaborate or elegant or great pieces of oratory.
He even sort of mentions, almost as an aside, that he didn't have the leisure for that fancy style.
Right, but that wasn't the real reason.
No, it was a conscious choice. He wasn't aiming for sophisticated language. It wasn't about his ability. It was a strategy, wasn't it? To connect with ordinary people.
Right.
Understanding over showing off.
Exactly. His target audience, ad populum, the common people. That was everything here. He knew they might not get complex rhetoric.
Or even appreciate it.
Right. But they could definitely grasp the truths that mattered for their lives, here and now and for eternity. He met them right where they were.
And he actively avoids, what does he call them? Nice and philosophical speculations, perplexed and intricate reasonings, even the show of learning, unless he's directly quoting scripture. Such a grounded approach.
It's like he's deliberately stripping away anything that could possibly obscure the main point. He chooses plain truth for plain people. Simple words, everyday language.
Avoiding the theological jargon.
Definitely. Stuff that the average person just wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And he even admits, he might slip into it sometimes by accident.
Which shows how self-aware he was, right? Really thinking about his audience and how to communicate clearly.
Yeah, it's a real commitment.
And this connects to that intriguing idea of him forgetting his reading. What's that about?
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He talks about this deliberate effort to speak as if he'd never read anyone else, apart from the Bible.
Which is pretty radical for someone who was obviously very well read in theology.
He thought it would help him express his own feelings, his own convictions more clearly, without getting tangled up in, other people's ways of putting things.
So it's about getting to the core of his own understanding, sort of unfiltered.
And maybe approaching truth with fewer preconceptions, both for himself and for how he presented it. Like he's aiming for a kind of theological freshness, making sure his message wasn't just repeating old ideas, but came straight from his reading of Scripture.
Which brings us right to his personal approach to truth. He shares that really personal reflection on his own mortality, being a creature of a day, here today, gone tomorrow.
That sense of urgency, of life being short,
Yeah.
It drives his intense focus on knowing one thing, the way to heaven. It's deeply personal. You feel it underpinning his whole ministry.
And the answer for him, the Bible. Total reliance on it as God's revealed path. Homo unius libri.
A man of one book.
Yeah. It's such a powerful statement about where his authority comes from.
But it's crucial for you, the listener, to understand his method, how he actually engaged with that one book. It wasn't just casual reading.
Yeah.
He describes this very deliberate process, reading alone, praying for understanding. Lord, is it not thy word? Comparing scripture with scripture, meditating on it.
And consulting others too, right? Experienced believers, writings from the past.
Exactly. So what he teaches isn't just his isolated take. It's what he believes comes out of this really intentional, prayerful study, informed by tradition as well.
And from that personal foundation, he then moves to talking about how to distinguish true religion.
Right. His stated goal is to show what he finds in the Bible about the way to heaven, and importantly, to separate that from human inventions or traditions that might muddy the waters.
He wants to describe true, the scriptural, experimental religion. That word experimental, it's key, isn't it?
It really is. It points to a faith that's lived, felt, experienced inside, not just, agreeing with ideas in your head. He wants nothing non-essential added, nothing core left out.
And he flags two main concerns he has in doing this.
Yes. First, he wants to protect newcomers, people new to faith, from just settling for formality or mere outside religion. He felt that had kind of taken over from real heart religion.
You really see that tension he felt between just going through the motions, the outward stuff, and having that genuine inner life of faith. His priority is clearly the inward experience.
Clearly. Then his second concern is aimed at those who do have that religion of the heart, that faith which worketh by love.
What's the warning for them?
He warns them against maybe thinking that faith means you can ignore God's law, making void the law through faith, falling into, as he puts it, the devil's snare. He's guarding against antinomianism.
The idea that grace means rules don't matter anymore.
Exactly. So he's looking for this balance, the powerful inner experience, and a life lived according to God's ways.
Okay, now he also mentions including some older sermons preached at Oxford.
Yes, that's right. At the request of friends, apparently. 3 of his, one by his brother Charles, all given at the University of Oxford. Which might seem a bit odd, given his focus on plain talk for common folk.
But there was a reason, wasn't there? A strategic one.
Very much so. He includes them specifically to push back against accusations that their theology had changed over the years.
So people were saying they taught differently now compared to before.
Seems like it. So by putting these earlier university sermons alongside his current preaching, he's basically saying, look, here's what we said then, here's what we say now, you compare them.
It lets readers judge for themselves if there's been some big shift in their core beliefs. It's a smart way to handle that criticism as the Methodist movement was growing.
It's a proactive, definitely.
And then finally we get to this part about his humility, his openness to being corrected, which I find really compelling.
Me too. He just openly says, look, I might be wrong about some things. My mind is open to conviction. That takes some humility, especially for a leader like him.
He genuinely seems to want to be better informed. He practically begs, teach me what I don't know. It's quite striking.
And he even gives pointers on how people should correct him if they think they see things more clearly.
Yeah, like treat him respectfully.
Show him from plain scripture.
Be patient if he doesn't immediately agree.
Right. And guide him gently, no harsh names or angry criticism.
He even quotes Homer, doesn't he? About anger, dimming the soul's eyes, clouding judgment.
It really emphasizes that for him, love is more important than just knowledge without love. That's crucial for any kind of constructive talk about faith. It's like he's setting the ground rules. Let's discuss these vital things with open hearts, aiming for understanding, not just winning an argument.
It shows his pastoral side, I think. He's not just concerned with getting the doctrine perfectly right, but with building a community based on love and respect, even when people disagree theologically.
Absolutely. It's a powerful end to the preface.
So as we wrap up this look at Wesley's preface, what are the main takeaways for you, especially thinking ahead to the sermons themselves?
For me, it's got to be that commitment to clear, simple language, making deep truths accessible. You just know that's going to shape how he presents things in the sermons.
Right.
And also his absolute reliance on Scripture, but through that careful, prayerful method he described, that's the foundation you'll see him building on.
I agree. And that emphasis on experimental religion seems vital too as we get ready to dive into the sermons. This idea that faith has to be lived, felt, experienced. That's bound to be a constant theme, isn't it?
I think so.
And his humility, his openness to correction really sets a tone, maybe for how we should approach studying these things ourselves.
Definitely. And bringing it back to you, the listener, if you're interested in understanding these foundational beliefs, this preface really is its essential groundwork. It gives you such valuable insight into the mindset, the priorities that shaped everything that follows.
We understand his intentions now, his whole approach to communicating his core beliefs, even before we get to the beliefs themselves.
It prepares you perfectly.
It really does. So here's something to think about. How does Wesley's focus on plain language and really engaging personally with scripture strike you today? In our world, that's just flooded with information. And maybe also, how could his way of handling disagreement, his call for respectful dialogue, be a model for us, even when we have really different, deeply held beliefs?
Those are such important questions for us to carry forward as we look forward to the next deep dives, getting into the specifics of those 44 standard sermons. This preface has definitely given us a much richer context.
We really hope this deep dive has provided a solid foundation for you as you explore Methodist thought. We'd encourage you to mull over Wesley's words here and definitely join us next time as we delve deeper into these really important theological discussions in his standard sermons.